Patrick, thank you very much. It's great to hear the endorsement of standardization and working together. A lot of what we're talking about today will follow along out of your ideas. Speaking of standardization to achieve safety, our next topic is ISAGO, IATA's Safety Audit for Ground Operations. It's a very important industry initiative which has been revised to even better suit the needs of everybody involved. Paul Fleming is going to talk about these changes and what they mean to us. Paul?
Good morning, everybody. I'd like to take, first of all, a few moments just to introduce myself because probably a new name, a new face. I certainly, when I look around the room, I don't see many people that I recognize. In fact, when I looked through the list of participants, some 900 or so, I think I saw 5 names that I recognized. And only one of those persons I actually probably know, Andrew, for instance. So my background is not in ground handling, per se. So when I came into IATA about 2 years ago, just over 2 years ago, it was quite an eye-opener. I didn't realize how complex ground handling is, how complex your job is, how complex it is to try and create something like ISAGO to cater for not just your needs, but for the airline's needs and for the industry needs. So when I came into IATA, that was part of my role, was to look at ISAGO and say, well, okay, what does it need to do to meet the demands of the future and to cater for everyone's needs and produce benefits? It was quite a challenge. I didn't do it alone. There is now, under myself, there's a team, a very small team in IATA of 6 people. That's all we have. I have one of the team here today, and I'd like to recognize Berth Lawson, if you'll stand up. Berth is the dean of ISAGO at the moment. She is the longest-serving person in the team, and she is the go-to person, certainly for me. If I need to know anything, she's got the answers. As you can see, she's a lady as well. So often she gets referred to as Mr. Lawson, or just Lawson. But nevertheless, whatever happens, whatever comes her way, she answers the questions. Okay, that's about me, a little bit anyway. What I'd like to do is take you through a few slides, some information on what's happening in my world, and hopefully what can happen in your world too as well. So, just like EASA, we went through a major review. And in September 2017, we launched the new program. It was a major change, for not just for us, but for the ground handlers too that were subject to the audits. And we have now completed 16 months or so of the new model. These are the results from last year. We conducted the same number, or roughly the same number of audits as we had in the previous 2 or 3 years. We didn't expect any drop. We didn't get any drop in interest. In fact, we had more interest. We just couldn't cater for the interest. We couldn't do more because we'd had to set up the framework, we had to set up the audit teams, we had to set up various processes to make it work. We didn't quite estimate the amount of work that was given to 6 people to undertake. However, we did it. We did 245 audits last year. Quite a remarkable thing to do, in my view. Part of the way that we did it, and one of the major changes that we incorporated, was the way that the auditors were contracted. Gone was the pool method where we used and relied upon the airlines to provide the auditors. We now have our own pool of auditors that are selected, they are trained and qualified by IATA. So we had to establish all the mechanism to do that and the training regimes and everything else. We have what's now known as the COPA. It's the IATA Charter of Professional Auditors. And at this time, we have roughly about 70 auditors in that charter at our disposal. They are located around the world, and they are available at most times to conduct audits. By the end of this year, we hope to have nearly 100, and there are still some that are yet to be processed through our application stages. So things are looking a lot better. We are now on sort of looking at the audits for 2020. We'll start to process them in August of this year. And we are in better shape to deliver. Now, the title of this presentation is that, well, it uses the words game changer. So why is ISAGO a game changer? Well, perhaps this next slide will demonstrate it. The number of findings that we raised, or the auditors raised, in those 245 audits last year increased from an average of 2 or 3 per audit to nearly 20. There are a total of nearly 5,000 at the end of the day findings. Now, why was that? It was partly down to the fact that in the new program, we focus on the management of operations. We go to the corporate headquarters of the organization and say, tell us, show us, demonstrate to us what management and oversight capabilities you have for the operations that you conduct throughout your network. We want to see how you manage safety, security, quality, all the other good management terms at your stations. Some, obviously, ground service providers were not prepared for that. That's not a bad thing, because now they are. Because to get an ISAGO registration, within 6 months of doing the audit, you have to be prepared. You have to have the management systems in place. You have to be in conformity with the standards. The other reason why perhaps we got more findings is because of the quality of the auditing. That charter of professional auditors, our auditors now are, we believe, better. Simple as that. They go into the standards in more depth. They go into the seeking of evidence in more thoroughly, and they produce a better audit. We used to talk about 0 findings. That seems to be a thing of the past, certainly in ISAGO. It might come back again later, because obviously we don't want to continue with this sort of trend, thinking that there's ground handlers out there that don't conform to the standards, and eventually I guess that number will come down. I hope it does. But at the moment, what we're doing is we're doing a much more thorough audit than we did in the past. The other reason is that we are introducing standards. It's not just the ISAGO standards as well. We are tying up with our colleagues in other parts of IATA that produce standards such as the IGOM and the Cargo Handling Manual and all the regulations that go with cargo too as well. We're aligning ourselves, trying to create a much more stronger, much more durable and robust set of standards, and then the audits and practices to check on the conformity of those standards in implementation. That's what the new ISAGO is all about. And I think the results themselves, certainly so far, justify why we can say it's been a game changer. As it stands, we have 186 ground service providers that are registered. They operate at 311 stations at 210 airports around the world. Now, this was as of 7th of May. The numbers change as we do the audits, as the audits come to completion, as they're closed. The numbers are also changing as well because of the way that the model works. Remember I said that we focus on the corporate side? Well, that means now that the number of registered GSPs equals the number of GSPs. We register you as a corporation, as an organization. We will then do an audit at one of your stations, and that station will be accredited to your registration. So the numbers are changing slightly. Before, whenever you've completed an audit, you are registered. Now that no longer takes place. However, we are still wishing to do as many audits as we can. The more stations that you get accredited, the more that you'll get recognition. And I'd like to show you in a minute how that recognition can be of benefit. One of the major aims of ISAGO, though, is still to help the airlines, to assist the airlines in their oversight of outsourced activities. We have currently 16 airlines that have gained, sorry, I do apologize. It's now 17. 17 airlines that subscribe to get ISAGO reports. There are ISAGO members. Now, okay, that's a rather disappointing number. We admit that. But there's probably a good reason why airlines aren't flocking to our desk and saying, sign me up. And that's probably because of a number of reasons. Maybe it's because they're waiting to see what happens with ISAGO. Maybe they're waiting to see better reasoning for joining. Maybe they want to see some other change occur. But we are now beginning to see a little bit more interest in ISAGO from the airlines. I think certainly from the results that we achieved last year, they're starting to stand up and take notice. And the other reason is because of this. We have a new ISAGO registry. I like this. I think this is a really neat and useful tool. What it is a graphical interface online which shows you where ground service providers are located within the world or within your network. If I think from an airline point of view, I can say, I can plug in, I can ask to see where the GSPs are. I can also see their ISAGO status. I can see which disciplines have been audited. I can also go into more detail. I can also see, or I can download, a copy of the audit report. I can also see other information, such as the alignment between their headquarters and their station in terms of conformity of the GOSARPs. I can also see, certainly soon, their status of implementation of the IGOM. And we can build on this. We can put a lot more information on this online tool. It looks very promising. And certainly, it's something that we can develop in a bigger way. Like most things, though, it doesn't come free of charge. You have to become an ISAGO member to get access to it. So what happens this year? Well, we have roughly the same number of audits to do. We originally had 300. That's now going to drop slightly because of various circumstances. But more importantly, though, I want you to focus on the fact that we have 50 new locations. we see some shift in the ground service providers. They are judging where best to spend their money on ISAGO. So they're saying, well, I won't do this station, I'll do this station. I will not do the station this year, I'll do it next year. That's their choice. Entirely up to them, for whatever reason they decide to do it. The other thing that is high on my agenda this year is a request from the Board of Governors, the IATA Board of Governors, to look at a potential mandate of ISAGO. Whoa, what does that mean? Well, at the moment I can't tell you, because we're still exploring the options, exploring the ideas. In fact, the Board of Governors have asked us just to do that at this moment in time. What does a mandate look like? What will it involve? Well, the only thing I can tell you at this moment in time is it will be very, very difficult to do, because we predict from our information that there are roughly around about 11,000 ground service providers out there in the world. We couldn't possibly do an audit of 11,000 service providers. So that's why we need to be a bit more out-of-the-box thinking, maybe use a bit more innovation, but certainly we need to have a collaborative approach. We need to do that anyway, regardless of a mandate. We need to think of new ways of improving the audits, and we're open to ideas. We need to keep aware of changes in the industry too, and that because it's not just new technology, it's also new methods of working. To help us, we have embarked upon a major project in IATA called digital transformation. Collecting data, lots of data, and using it, analyzing it, and producing results, information that will give us a better idea of what we need to do. That information is also useful, of course, to the industry as well. They can see for themselves what they need to do and how we can help them. It goes back as well to the ISAGO registry. We can build upon that as well, provide much more useful information on not just the way that the world shapes up as far as standardization of ground services, but also IGOM status and also ISAGO status as well. So the future looks quite bright in a way. It looks very challenging. I've certainly got my orders to try and make a difference, and I hope to be able to make that difference with you guys, and that because it's not something that IATA wants to do alone. So that's the message that I'd like to bring today. I'd like to thank the organizers for inviting me to spend 10 minutes up here, and I wish you all a very pleasant day. Thank you.